Hello and welcome everybody to our webinar on ISO certifications today. My name is Sophie. I'm guiding you through this session and this hopefully interactive webinar on 5 tips for your next ISO audit with Plunet. I already said it, this is not only for people who are ISO certified, of course. The tips also work for everybody else who likes to have quality management features in place. But we do concentrate on a couple of things that are important for the certification, and we are covering 5 tips, which I will go through very quickly before we get started and move to the software. But before we get started, let's quickly talk about what you are going to see today and what you need, which requirements they are. So I'm showing you things in the system that require our QualityManager module, which is an additional module that you can add to your Plunet installation. And there are also a couple of things where you need admin rights for. If you don't have them, of course, the session still might be interesting from a user perspective. But yeah, for some tweaks in the system, you would need admin rights. And a quick summary of what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about human resources that are required for ISO standards. We're talking about workflows, how you can design workflows that are ISO certified. We're talking about documentation, as well as feedback management and complaints. But let's start with our first tip today, keeping proper documentation and file management. This, of course, is a loaded topic. A lot of things need to be documented in a translation workflow. We all know that. And of course, this covers a lot of different things in the system. Let's actually start with a little tip, which is something super small, but can actually help you a lot with your next audit, and that is the customer portal. You might ask yourself, what does the customer portal have to do with ISO certification? It actually has something to do with it because for ISO standards, if you want to follow the standards, you have to give a little confirmation to your customer as soon as you receive the source document from them and the request. So if your customer sends you a request via email, you have to respond and let them know that you receive it. Even if they call you, you need to make sure you send a request confirmation. If you are using Plunet and you're using the customer portal, I'm logged in as a client right now, and I am creating 5 tips for ISO webinar, a quick example project. If your customer is using the portal, the great thing is the system will automatically send them a request confirmation. So that request confirmation is completely customizable by you, and you don't need to worry about it. As soon as this request is sent, you know that they will have that email confirmation. So if you ever get an audit for that, you can show that. And of course, I will ask for a translation here. You can also add the ISO compliance required field here, which of course you don't have to. As soon as the customer puts in a translation request on your end, it's of course clear that that needs to follow ISO standards. If you are ISO certified, all of your translation projects have to follow the standard. You can pick and choose. But this little check mark is actually kind of nice because it's a bit of a marketing effect as well, because you can show your customers that, you are following the ISO standards. Let's quickly look here. We have an English into German translation project, and I will just quickly upload an example file so we can walk through these setups with an example in mind. And I have a quick summary here. And again, kind of nice to see here the check mark for ISO for the customer as well. And then as soon as the customer sends this request, in this case, I'm creating an order, it's not just this pop-up, it's also an email that the customer will receive. And also that email is actually a nice thing to customize and have ready for your clients. I will quickly show you in the admin section. This is where the admin rights come in. where you can change this. If you go to admin document templates and in your email templates and open this here, you can see all of the different email templates that you can set up. If you type in request, you can see the request confirmation here that gets automatically sent if you activate it to the customer, and also sends a copy to you, for example, as the account manager. And then you can, send a really nice text for your customers. It's completely custom, and you can decide, of course, what you want to put in. You can also change it once a week if you want to mix it up a little bit. But this can really, really help you with your, with your workload, because again, the system automatically sends it and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Still talking about setups and documentation of different things. The next topic I want to talk about is human resources, because there's a lot of things you need to track in the system. And when it comes to ISO, human resources are, of course, extremely important. If you are ISO certified, your vendors need to be ISO certified as well. There are different things that make somebody ISO certified. For example, you can have vendors that have a formal education in translation, higher education in translation. You might have vendors that have an equivalent education and they have 2 years of experience that is documented, or you have vendors that have 5 years of documented experience in translation. So there are different vendor types that you have, and you might also have vendors that are not ISO certified, but you use them for other not certified services. For example, machine translation post-editing falls under a different standard, or things like interpreting, of course, do not fall under ISO. So how can you document your HR? This is a bit of a more complex topic. So let's start with the easiest one first. If you go through your vendors and you want to add their qualifications, you can already see here that I activated 2 custom properties. One is ISO qualified translator. Yes, no. The other one is the actual freelancer qualification. So these are 2 completely customizable properties that are created. One is to track what kind of qualification does the vendor have to be ISO certified. You can also, of course, filter for that. So again, could be the higher education and translation, but could also be 5 years of documented professional experience. So you can make sure you have that in the system to see how people are qualified. But then, of course, it's also nice to see if they are. However, this one here gets a little more complex because, of course, not everybody is certified for every language combination. So I want to show you how that looks like in the system. So I'm using myself as an example. I'm letting you all know, very important, I'm not a translator. I'm just using myself here as the example translator for today. Please do not send me any translation work. So first of all, if I want to make sure that I document that Sophie is a translator that is ISO certified, I can actually here, I will do it again in the resource folder, document all of the documentation that I have for this vendor. So I can actually create a new folder if I like, call it Qualifications for ISO, and then I can put in everything I have. So for example, a certification of a university diploma, I can put in the person's resume, all of that information that I have on file for their qualifications. So again, auditors love when everything is nicely documented, so can easily show, just go into the resource folder and I have all of the ISO qualifications right there for that vendor. But of course, that's not searchable, right? You don't want to go into each person's folder to see if they're ISO certified and also what makes them certified. This is why I created a property. You know, properties are great tags for your vendors that help you search them based on domain, based on category of staff, different services a vendor might do. And maybe country of origin, maybe you need somebody who has American citizenship for a project, or you need somebody who is definitely located in Europe. So there are different things you can use this for. But yeah, one thing I haven't set up here yet is the freelancer qualification. So what makes me certified for ISO? So you can see here, I created freelancer qualification. You can call this property, of course, whatever you like. And then I can add, for example, equivalent education plus 2 years of experience. That makes Sophie qualified. If I'm using that as a search filter, I can do that in my vendor search here. So I can, for example, if I delete the search, use that exact filter here as a search filter, and then look for all of my vendors with that education type, and then find everybody who is tagged with it, which in my case is me. So why am I not just saying Sophie's ISO certified? As I already mentioned, the yes/no property is actually based on the language combination. So I'm adding it to my price list. Not all of my price lists, because maybe I'm also doing DTP, which I don't need to be ISO certified for. I'm actually adding that to my translation price list. So this is actually where I want to add the property. And you can see that I added the property to the actual language combination. Let me remove it again and start here from the beginning. So I have a price list for translation. Also important, the language combinations as a search filter always come from the price list. So it's super important that you have the exact language combinations for each vendor in the price list. So Sophie here has English into German as well as English into French as the two language combinations. As a native German speaker, me as a translator, if I were one, am only certified for German though. So I can add that property to only one language combination. So now if I'm looking for a vendor for English into German that is ISO certified, I will show up. If it's English into French, even if I have all the other qualifications, I will not show up. So very quickly to summarize, under communication, we have the resource folder where we can put all of the documentation for the vendor in. Under properties, I'm actually tracking what qualifies that vendor for ISO. And lastly, in the price list, I'm adding it to the language combination that I need or that I'm qualified for. A lot of people actually use that feature already, but sometimes also for different things. So yeah, it is a really cool thing to do. But of course, you always have to keep in mind that you can only use this for in one place. So you can either use the property for the overall profile, for the price list itself, or for a language combination, not for both. Because of course, if you put the ISO yes on resource level, then you would basically certify them for all language combinations. So very important distinctions. So now that we have our certified vendor, let's go to tip 3, building ISO certified workflows. This one is also extremely important because this is something, of course, that will be checked when you get an audit. Your auditors will actually come in and look at random orders and see if you followed the ISO standards. So of course, the better everything is tagged with project categories, the better for you. But you have to be prepared for somebody going into your status report and might not using the ISO compliance required checkmark here, but actually looking for all of your translation projects and then going in and seeing if yeah, the workflows were correct, which is no problem at all in Plunet because creating ISO certified workflows is one of the easiest things to do in the system. So we can actually go into our request here and create an ISO certified workflow. I can see already here, my service requested is translation. So in this case, I don't even need to know that the client checked this, I know that I have to create an ISO workflow for this because, again, once you're ISO certified, all of your projects have to follow the standard. So now, if I'm going in and creating a workflow for my two language combinations, English, German, and English, French, I will add just one translation job for now and show you, first of all, very important, that the system, based on my setups, is automatically looking for an English-German translator who's ISO certified. So you can see my little property here that we discussed is also part of the job properties. And if I go to the assignment tab, the system is automatically looking only for people who are ISO certified for English into German. If I'm looking for my French, which I will do in a little bit, I will not show, even though I have all of the other selection criteria, the language, the source and target language, and the staff category and the service. I do not have this for French, but here I am as the translator. So let me quickly assign this job. Let me also give it a due date while we're here. System, yeah, is letting me know that I forgot the due date, but I just putting it in right now. So now this job is in progress. I have a translation job. So now if I go back into my order, actually the system is warning me that my following items are not ISO certified. This is actually, I mean, you will probably not jump back and forth while creating a workflow, but if you do, if you, for example, already assign your vendor, but forget that you actually also have to assign an editor or a revisor for this, the system gives you this little, mark here to let you know that you forgot something. So what I will do, I'm actually adding an editing job here. So if I'm adding that editing job to the workflow, this would be already an ISO certified workflow. Why? Because for the translation job, I have set up in the system under admin jobs. Again, this is where the admin rights come in handy, but Plunet allows you to set up for each of your job types what makes them ISO compliant. So in this case, I set up that my translation job is only ISO compliant in combination with an editing job. This could, of course, also be a revision job, depending on how you call your second step. But just, something I wanted to show you. This is why the system still gives me a little note here, because I have to select a resource. Why does it tell me to select a resource and tell me this is not red anymore, but still yellow? Because I'm not allowed to have the same resource doing translation and editing. So if I try to be smart and put myself in here, again, even though I'm not qualified, first of all, the system won't let me because I don't fulfill the requirements. So the system will let me know, nope, you cannot. This person does not have the selection criteria. But if I try to assign myself and it worked, which I can quickly do here, if I'm removing the staff category, then the system would still let me know that this is not okay. So now Sophie is both the translator and the editor, and I'm still not ISO certified because it says the double verification principle is not met. Again, I don't think anybody actually tries to do this, but I just wanted to show you how the system helps you, even if you make a mistake, to kind of warn you if something does not add up. But let me add our editor here and then assign this to a different person to then finally make this ISO certified. So now my system should be actually happy. Let's see what Plunet says. Yes, so now my order is finally ISO. So yeah, What is the next step? So now I have my ISO certified workflow. Of course, you can also create a workflow template. So you don't need to build the workflow. You can, if I do it for French here, you can already create a workflow that has all of the steps automatically in here. So for example, translation, revision, review, automatic delivery. I'm pretty sure you have those workflow templates set up. Even better, then you don't have to create them each time. But this helps you with the design of ISO certified workflows. So now that I have my workflow, I have my ISO certified vendor, what is the next thing you have to keep in mind? It is the actual feedback. So a tip for today is automating feedback management. If you follow ISO standards, you have to track feedback. You have to track feedback for your customers and you have to track feedback for your vendors as well. So this is actually a requirement that you have to follow. You don't need the QualityManager module for this, but of course it helps. And today I want to give you that tip: automate it. Have your editors give feedback to your translators in the workflow, and I will show you how that looks like, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. So going back to this workflow, let's say Sophie is delivering this file here and delivers this job. I will quickly just do this as the project manager because now the editor is working on the editing, and we want to make sure this editor, we log off as the project manager, log in as the editor, is giving feedback for Sophie. So poor me, I'll get a bad feedback for my translation now. But let's first look at the editing job. He actually has a couple of overdue jobs himself. So maybe you should look at that as well. So this is the editing job here for our tips webinar. And of course, little side note, but the translated file can be downloaded by the editor and worked on. And then the editor can give feedback. So the feedback here is completely customizable. And you can give the right to give feedback to some of your vendors, to all of your vendors. That completely depends on how you want to work. And also the criteria you see here, you can set up with little mouse overs as well. And again, completely up to you. So let's just say everything was quite good. I met the deadline, but I messed up a little bit with the terminology. So the vendor wants to make sure the editor wants to share that with me. So for example, I could say, the client usually uses the word quote for the German word Angebot and not price estimation. Please ensure to follow that with your next project, for example. So this is really great feedback, right? This really helps the translator for next time. It's not really wrong. It's more of like a client terminology thing. Of course, there could also be way worse things that can happen in translation, but this gets logged automatically from the editor. And now the editor can, of course, upload their edited version of the document. I can quickly just upload that and then deliver it for this vendor here. So as the project manager or also as the quality manager, let me log back in as that person, you would receive, of course, an email if you receive feedback. And you can then look at what has been logged. So let's go into that project and look at how that looks like for me as the project manager. I can then go into the translation job and I can see that I actually received this complaint. So in this case, of course, this was great because our wonderful editor caught the mistake, and the customer gets the actual right file when I deliver the file to the client. But I have that here. And I, of course, want to share this with the translator. I can do that in different ways. I can send the feedback to the translator directly, or I can just give them the right under admin rights for external resources. You can also give them the right to see their feedback automatically. So once they receive the feedback and they go into their delivered jobs, they can actually review the feedback themselves. From our clients, we actually got the feedback that the feedback on the feedback that translators really, really like receiving that feedback because they can improve, they can get better, and they found it really helpful. We do also have a couple of clients who want to review the feedback first and maybe add something themselves, especially if you have your own QA in-house. So of course, that's also possible. So you could actually send it manually via email. So this would go to Sophie, and this is, of course, a completely customizable form. So if it's not a good feedback, you might not want to say you are a star. This is just to show you how customizable it is. I could also say, hi, Sophie, and then you can see all of that information here. You can either just keep as it is. So you can see the system automatically places what our, I'll highlight it real quick, what the editor has put as the comment. There's a flag for it for the email, and the system then puts it in, and you can put in the email. This is the comment we got from the editor on your translation. Please, review, take into consideration. You can also share the feedback in percent. You can also, of course, remove that and only share the overall score. This is all completely customizable and up to your choosing. And then you can send this, or again, you could also give Sophie the right to see the feedback internally, and then you wouldn't even have to send it via email. They can just check it themselves. Or you can do a combination of both. If there's very important feedback and you maybe want to add a couple of comments to that as well. So this was feedback on vendor side. So again, in this case, we caught the mistake here. For your customers, you also have the chance to ask them for feedback. There are different ways of doing it. You can request the order feedback again manually as soon as everything is delivered by clicking the email button here. The system creates an email. The system even creates a link, if you like, that leads the customer directly to the rating page, which is pretty cool. But of course, you can also just send them an email and get their feedback via email, so they don't have to do it in the portal, because of course not all clients use the customer portal, even though it would be great if they did, going back to tip 1. But of course, yeah, not everybody does. So in this case, you might get a feedback in a different way. Maybe they call you, maybe they send you an email. So let's just say we get that order feedback from the customer via email, and I just want to track it. Coming back also to documentation, also tip 1, everything needs to be documented for ISO. You need to show the auditors that you document any feedback you receive, regardless how. So even if you don't have the customers using the portal, you can also track what they told you and put it in here. It's great if you all have it in one system. So let's just say we get a not so great response here because the customer lets us know that there was a terminology issue, the Angebot price estimation issue again. So let's say terminology. And let's just say this is the feedback that you received from the client. So what do you do now that you received a bad feedback? First of all, the great thing is that you already have it in the system, but now we're coming actually to our very last tip for today. That is braving complaint management. Complaint management is also part of the ISO standards. And I cannot say this enough, even if you're not planning on getting ISO certified, this is really one that I recommend doing anyway. you can track any type of complaints, regardless whether or not they're justified or not. So if you get this complaint about terminology, you can actually log a complaint. You can also give customers the chance to log complaints themselves. I usually don't recommend that because I would collect the feedback and then log a complaint based on that, because sometimes it's like a little weird to ask for feedback, which then sounds like that's only positive and complaints as a negative. But you can log that complaint officially in the software. So let's do that real quick. So I have a terminology complaint here from the client. So I can put this in. This short description is a text field. I can also tag the customer who actually gave me that complaint. In this case, Rosa was the one who called. And then I can put the type of complaint. This is completely customizable to you. In this case here was the wrong terminology. You can, of course, also have multiple ones. Maybe there was also a domain, a content mistake. So these complaint types completely customizable by you. So you could add anything. If it's a service complaint, if you offer interpreting and you want to, for example, have interpreting complaints like interpreter did not follow a dress code or was late. So you can add any type of complaint here. Then you can also add the item. So this complaint maybe was only for German, as the German translator, Sophie, who did that. And then these here are completely customizable text module fields that I added to the system. So for example, if you have like an internal tracking, you could have that in there. Or if you want to track something like the impact on the business relationship, because maybe you actually, and now we're getting to the measures here, maybe you had a meeting with the customer, a quick call about this, and afterwards it was actually positive. We had a great call with Eric, or in my case, Rosa, and they're sending you more work because they really appreciated how you handled this complaint, for example. You can also say, well, I actually also need to meet with the vendor here. And of course, you can add a severity level as well based on your own choosing. If you think this is a severe complaint, medium or low, is of course based on your internal processes. Sometimes customers ask, wait, which one should I choose? Again, you can put together, of course, a guideline on what is a severe complaint. In this case, I would say this is medium, and I can also track internal costs. If, for example, I say, well, I spent half an hour on the phone with the customer, or I actually have to give the customer a discount, then I could also track that as external cost. So in this case here, I say this is my internal cost. And then if I actually had to put a discount on my, my project here, didn't put any cost in, then I could also say, well, actually, I spent $100 on this. So this is my complaint here. So now I have that complaint. And now I have to also, of course, log what happened on vendor side. So again, braving complaints, let's move back to the workflow and make sure I also take note of Sophie, because she was the person who actually was part of the complaint. And actually, before I do that, I have a quick question here that I want to answer right away about where to customize the complaint types in the admin section. So let me quickly do that before we go to the complaint for the vendor. So if you go to admin miscellaneous, you actually have complaints here. So admin miscellaneous complaints. And then you can see here are all of the types of complaints that if you have a new system completely empty, you can put them all in. And the complaint measures here are also completely customizable. So for example, if I want to add something like new translation as a complaint measure, I can add that. And then it's right here for me to select when I'm back at the job. And again, the types of complaints also completely customizable. I usually also like to classify them. For example, you could set some up that are more linguistic related, some that are more about the domain or terminology. You can have some service requests, service complaints. So you can really decide how you want to structure this for your own complaint management. So thank you for that question. I always think it's good to also cover the admin area to make sure everybody knows where to make these changes. So let's go back into that job and look at the feedback and complaint section. So I already have the feedback here. I mean, if I had gotten that feedback from the editor, I would have not gone through the whole complaint with the client. But let's say the editor didn't figure it out, or we got this complaint and we still want to log that complaint, I will actually add a new complaint here. So again, I have my terminology issue here. And I can also say in this case here, there was wrong terminology. Reason for complaint, it could be the editor feedback, or it could be client feedback, or both. In my poor case here, I have both. Then I can link it to an order complaint. So if you get a complaint about a translation and you also got that complaint, of course, for the client, you can link those. The cool thing is then you can always jump to the linked order complaint and see what did the client say, what did the editor say, so you can maybe even compare. In this case here, I can see what did the editor say? Maybe it wasn't the translator at all. Maybe it was something else. Maybe the client wasn't really clear in with their terminology or their glossaries. So there are a lot of things that can lead to a complaint, of course. It's not about finding, the person who's wrong. It's more about documenting it for ISO standards and, of course, also for your own records. You can see here there's a very important little check mark. We have the same on order complaint side where we will jump to. That is the complaint justified or not? So following ISO standards, you have to actually log all of the complaints. It doesn't matter if they're justified or not. I have gotten this question quite often, so that's why I'm covering it here. People say, why would I actually log a complaint that is not justified? Well, it's still important, and you can also run reports on those. So for example, if you run a report on unjustified complaints or justified complaints, and you see, I get a lot of complaints from client A, but they're usually classified as not justified. Maybe there is something wrong with the expectations that the client has. So maybe the client really, expects you to rewrite the whole file in Spanish, even though the translator did an awesome job. So there are a lot of things that there are a lot of things that might not be really justified and still need to be logged, so you can actually take action and make sure that you talk to the customer and give them the information they need to understand why your quality is actually meeting the standards they were requesting. So a little check mark, a lot of information, a lot of things packed into this one. So then let's look again. We have the severity and the complaint measures. So I had a meeting with the vendor. Maybe you also want to block a user. So again, completely customizable. And the same thing, you can try cost again. Maybe I talked an hour for this person, with this person, and maybe I have to actually, and now I'll show you the new complaint measure just created. Maybe I have to do a new translation all over. And that, of course, might actually cost me quite a bit of money. So I can create this here as well. And then once you're done with tracking everything, investigating, you can also close it. And let me jump back to the customer complaint. Let's say now after my investigation, I also say this is justified and I complete it. And now you can see that it is read-only. The reason it's read-only is because, and that's another tip I want to share, it makes sense to only give the right to delete and edit complaints to very few people, because again, under ISO, you're not allowed to change a complaint that was logged by a customer. So especially if you have the clients logging them themselves, you're of course not allowed to tamper with that, because maybe as a project manager, You get paid by performance, or it's one of your KPIs. So, I mean, there are multiple reasons why you don't want to mess with this. So let me quickly show you where you can actually give that right. So in this case, it's completed. The only thing I can do is here, I can jump into the job complaint and again, jump back and forth between those two. But let me show you the admin right real quick. So for my internal users, for Paul Leiter here, show you that he doesn't have the right to delete and therefore change order complaints, but this is a right at least somebody in your company, of course, should have in case there's a mistake or a customer even asks for a deletion. If you have that right, if I go back in here to the order complaint, then I have the right to edit it. So yeah, now we spoke a lot about complaints and feedback, and I actually want to know if you think that your freelancers are open to receiving job feedback, because this is a conversation we actually have a lot. So I'm launching a quick poll for you and would love to know if you think this is something your team of freelancers is open to. Maybe you even have them actively asking for it, or do you think, yes, they would appreciate it? Or do you feel like it's more on the no side? They don't want that? Or yeah, do you have a couple that do appreciate it? Others, they're not that interested. So yeah, let me know what you think about your freelancers that you're working with, because again, we get the feedback that if customers are launching it, even though a lot of them are really nervous in the beginning on how will the freelancers actually yeah, receive it. So let me see. Oh, we already got a lot of feedback here. Half of people have already voted. So yeah, it's super interesting for us to see how much yeah, this feature makes sense for people. And yeah, I think I will close the poll. So for everybody who hasn't responded yet, please do it quickly so we can see. Yeah, we have more than 60% coming in now. Yeah, and maybe this webinar gives you some inspiration for 2022 to launch feedback as well. And yeah, we of course always interested in seeing what people are doing with the system. So showing the results. So we actually have a lot of people saying that vendors do actually appreciate receiving it, almost 50%. It was 50% at some point, but then some more responses came in. And I mean, almost 30% are actually actively asking for it, which, by the way, I just love this industry so much. I think nothing better than having yeah, freelancers that ask for feedback to get better, and actually nobody is not interested in receiving feedback. So really, really interesting. Thank you so much for that response. On that same note, while we're all here, I'm also very interested in knowing if you are actually using the customer portal. So are you using the customer portal for incoming requests? We also hear things from, yes, all of our customers have to be on the portal. We are super serious about that, especially for those, of course, who are ISO certified that want to make sure that the request email goes out. We have others, and of course, you will always have a couple of clients who don't want to use the portal, but then, yeah, we have some that use it for a couple of customers, but haven't really gotten the majority on board, then some for very few, and some who are not using it at all. So not only thinking about ISO, but generally also very interested in seeing how much are you using the customer portal. So awesome seeing the votes coming in. Give it a little bit, and maybe the ISO audit is a good reason to start actually working with the portal So let's close the poll and share the results here. This is actually really, really great for us to see. So, I mean, for some customers is the most common answer, but very few people, only 8%, are using it for most clients, which shows, I mean, two things, of course. One, that there are some customers, depending on, of course, also the domains you cover and the industries you work with, where it's harder to get customers on the portal. But yeah, for everybody who thinks it could be interesting for the clients, something we really recommend looking at for, of course, multiple reasons. One being all of the time savings that you can have, but of course also that you yeah, might help your ISO audit with this as well. So thank you so much for yeah, answering the poll. Actually, this is already the end of our session today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing. And now I will open this for Q&A. But again, thank you for taking the time to listen to us and learning more about ISO together with our team.